Hi everyone, it's Ayesha Chidolue from the Chidolue Law Firm. I am an immigration attorney here in Orlando, Florida. I represent clients all over the United States as it pertains to immigration matter. And today I want to specifically talk about the Violence Against Women's Act. For short form, you've probably heard of the word VAWA, and that's essentially what it means. What is VAWA? So VAWA is basically something that not only covers women, so even though it has women in the name, Violence Against Women's Act, it will also cover children of United States citizen or legal permanent residents, parents of United States citizens or legal permanent residents, and of course spouses, whether they be female or male. And, the reason why VAWA was created was to prevent abuse towards non-United States citizens or legal permanent residents, basically foreign immigrants who are married or are relatives or family members of U.S. citizens who basically maltreat them on the basis of their U.S. citizenship or use it as something to hold against them. And so, a lot of times people ask, well, the name says violence, so, my spouse hasn't been violent to me, my child hasn't been violent to me, my parent hasn't been violent to me physically. But today I really just wanted to talk about the different forms of abuse that would place you in a situation where you potentially have a VAWA case, even though it's not necessarily physical abuse. So of course, the first one is physical abuse. If you've been physically abused, that is something that could trigger a VAWA application. Another one is threats of harm to others. If somebody says, if you don't do something, I'm going to hurt this person, I'm going to hurt your child. So even though nothing actually happened, that would open up the doors for you to do a VAWA application. Financial or economic abuse. So if somebody basically is holding on to the finances or doesn't want to release funds to you, or, basically everything that you do financially, you have to go through that person, or like the person just doesn't give you money. That's financial abuse, and that again will trigger VAWA. The other one is also intimidation and degradation. So if somebody intimidates you or hovers over you or threatens you, basically, listen, if you don't do this, I'm gonna call immigration, I'm gonna have you deported, so basically those threats, those are also things that can affect you, psychologically and emotionally. So those would also fall under a VAWA triggering event. And then of course, social isolation or detention or forced detention. If, your spouse or your parent or your child, doesn't want you to leave the house. You can't have any friends. They don't want to talk you talking to other people or talking to other people of what you're going through. That is a form of social isolation, and that would also trigger a VAWA application. And then of course, sexual abuse, which is self-explanatory. Any form of unwanted sexual, touching or advancement would be considered, a VAWA triggering event as well. And then, of course, harassment and jealousy as a whole. How does a person harass you and just attack you for no reason? That could also, depending on the situation, trigger VAWA. And then, of course, verbal abuse, somebody that abuses you verbally, where it affects you psychologically, and emotionally, that triggers VAWA. So these are some of the things that, if you're going through them, and you don't have status here, you can file, for a VAWA protection and adjustment of status through VAWA. So this, applies to you whether or not, you might be in a situation where you have a bar. If you legitimately have a situation that's based on this, VAWA is something that's available to you. Because typically when you have, for instance, using examples of, when you might have overstayed your visa, here, usually you have to go back and you face a 3-year or 10-year bar. before you can then apply again, but you overstayed. But if you are going through any of this cruelty or abuse, you know, the U.S. CIS will look, you know, favorably on you because, you know, you are obviously in a helpless or a defenseless situation. And usually, as long as you can provide proof, you know, police reports, police records, you know, your own declaration, you know, affidavits of people who know have seen something that happened. These are options available to you. So I just wanted to hop on here to just correct the misconception that it only has to be physical abuse, because it doesn't necessarily only have to be physically. It doesn't necessarily mean that your spouse or, you know, your parent or your child is physically abusive. It's just, you know, all the different ways in which I've talked about. So I hope you found this video helpful. As always, I'm an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. This video is for informational purposes only. If you found it helpful, definitely share it and comment below, or hit the like or love button. And if you would like to reach us, our office number is 407-995-6567. Thank you and have a wonderful day.